We're all familiar with school suspensions, right? The idea is that if you get in enough trouble, as punishment, you get sent home for a little while. When you eventually return, the hope is that you learned a valuable lesson and don't cause any more problems. Now, that always seemed crazy to me. You do something bad, and as punishment, you don't have to go to school? Shouldn't that be a reward? I mean, who doesn't want to sit around watching Netflix all day? But suspensions have some unintended consequences. Turns out, students who get suspended perform worse in school and are less likely to graduate. And according to a 2018 government report, schools have a discrimination problem when it comes to discipline. Black students get disciplined more harshly and more often than their white classmates for the same kind of misbehavior. You heard that right. A black kid could push another student or cuss at their teacher and get suspended, while a white kid could do the exact same thing and remain in school. Obviously, that's not cool. So over the last few years, more than half of U.S. states have passed laws to reduce suspensions. Now that's all well and good, but what happens if some real dangerous stuff goes down, like someone brings a weapon to school? That's why some people think suspensions are a necessary tool. It may not be great for the suspended student, but they say it's more important to keep everyone else at the school safe. So, should suspensions be suspended? If you've been paying attention to the news recently, suspensions are no bueno. And with good reason. Students who get suspended are more likely to repeat a grade, drop out of school, and become involved in the criminal justice system, aka the school to prison pipeline. And if you're unfamiliar with the term, the concept is pretty simple. Students who get suspended are more likely to drop out, and students who drop out are 3 times more likely to get arrested. So suspensions lead directly to more people in the U.S. prison system. And as we mentioned at the top of this video, suspensions aren't handed out equally or fairly. Students with disabilities are suspended at nearly twice the rate of students without disabilities. Black girls are suspended at 6 times the rate of white girls. Not a good look. Some people say that if you act up, you need to face the consequences. But a lot of behavior that results in school discipline exists in a gray area where our own subconscious stereotypes can influence our decision making. Sure, there's the stuff that's clearly suspendable, like bringing a gun to school. But sometimes it's because of what researchers call challenging behavior, like talking back to a teacher. And in those situations, research shows that students of color can get disciplined while their white classmates don't. Again, not a good look. So what are schools supposed to do? How do you balance school safety with the bad effects suspensions has on the individual students? One option is to replace out-of-school suspensions with in-school suspensions. Instead of getting sent home, a suspended student comes to school but is separated from other students. In theory, the benefit of this approach is that they can continue to learn at school where they're typically provided with a quiet, safe space to do their schoolwork, and their days are structured, and they may even get counseling. But critics say in-school suspensions are nothing more than a holding tank for disruptive students. In fact, some research shows that holding students in isolation may be just as harmful as sending them home. And in-school suspensions require additional staff, which some schools can't afford. Another option is restorative justice, where instead of punishment, the focus is on rehabilitation. If a fight breaks out between 2 students, instead of separating them and suspending them both, restorative justice focuses on bringing them together to talk out their issues in a respectful, safe manner. They're encouraged to accept responsibility for the harm they caused, while also reflecting on why they acted out. The hope is that the whole process will eventually create a safer, healthier school environment. It reminds me of being in middle school. We had something called Peace Patrol. And when you were on Peace Patrol, you got a blue jacket and a clipboard, and you got to patrol the recess yard when kids were out there playing. I mean, I guess it worked. Nobody got suspended on my watch, so who knows? Research from a Colorado school district found that when schools used restorative justice to deal with problems, suspension rates did indeed drop. However, black students still receive disproportionately more suspensions than white students. It's not clear exactly why that is, but restorative justice is difficult to get right. It's also expensive, requiring special training for staff. A third option is to keep it local. With this approach, each school decides what works best for its students. Out-of-school suspensions might be included, or they might not. Every school is unique, and the benefit of this approach is that it allows staff and teachers more flexibility to completely remove disruptive students. That's why when lawmakers in California tried to pass a bill in 2018 outlawing suspensions in middle schools, the governor vetoed it, saying the state shouldn't be too heavily involved in how local schools discipline students, because it's the teachers and principals who are in the classrooms every day, so they should be making the decisions. But a primary drawback of the local approach is what we talked about earlier. More out-of-school suspensions could feed the school-to-prison pipeline and disproportionately target certain minority students and kids with disabilities. And schools that suspend students aren't necessarily any safer than those that don't hand out suspensions. One study based on a survey of students in over 700 middle and high schools in New York City found that in general, schools with a higher suspension rate were perceived as less safe, while schools with no suspensions or a lower suspension rate were perceived as more safe. So what do you think? Should schools suspend suspensions? What will work best in your school and why? Let us know in the comments below. And hey, if you're a middle or high school teacher, you can get your students talking about this topic on KQED Learn. Check it out right here. And if you're a student, you can teach your teacher something by showing them this video on KQED Learn as well. Bonus points for you for sure. And as always, like, subscribe, tell your friends about us, keep watching our videos, and stay above the noise. Until next time, bye.